Rain hissed against the thatched roof of the small stone and timber cottage on the edge of the Bristolshire village, its sound muffled by the thick smoke curling from the hearth. Inside, the air was warm but heavy, with the scent of drying herbs, wood smoke, and the faint tang of damp wool. A single tallow candle flickered on the rough-hewn table, casting long shadows across the faces of the household. At the head of the table sat a man in his late 40s, his frame once broad with the strength of a freeman weaver, now bent by years and a wound from the King's War in France. His hands, once famed for their speed and grace in threading the loom, now trembled as he tried to repair a broken reed in a basket frame. His tunic, patched at the elbows, was drawn tight over his thin shoulders, and a worn leather brace supported his left leg, which dragged slightly when he walked. Across from him, a young woman of 20, dressed in a well-kept but slightly faded blue wool kirtle, its hem neatly mended, her hair bound in a simple linen wimple, watched his struggle with growing impatience. Her spoon stirred the thin pottage before her, but she hadn't taken a bite. "Must we eat shame with our pottage?" she finally snapped, her voice sharp as flint striking steel. "Even the beggar boys at St. Mary's Gate weave faster than you. Look at it, crooked, loose, useless. We'll starve before that basket holds so much as a turnip." The words struck the room like a dropped log in still water. Her younger brother, seated beside her in a rough-spun tunic, flinched and lowered his eyes. Their father did not look up. He simply set the reed down, his fingers curling slowly into his palm as if holding back more than pain. Near the hearth, the woman of the house, clad in a practical russet gown with a linen apron, her hair tucked beneath a plain coif, paused her spinning. The distaff in her hand stilled. Her face, usually calm as river stone, tightened almost imperceptibly. She said nothing. But her silence was heavier than any rebuke. Margreta pushed her bowl away, the scrape of wood on wood echoing in the quiet. "If you cannot work, then let someone who can take your place. Even I could do better, and I've never touched a loom." Her father finally lifted his gaze. His eyes, once bright with stories of guild fairs and Flemish cloth, were now dull with resignation. "Then perhaps," he said softly, "you should." He rose slowly, favoring his bad leg, and limped toward the door that led to the lean-to where his tools were kept. He did not speak again. Margreta turned away, her cheeks flushed, but not with shame. With indignation. She believed she had spoken truth. Poverty was hard enough without being reminded of it hourly by a man who could no longer provide. What she did not see, what her pride blinded her to, was that his hands, though slow, had never stopped working. That every crooked basket had bought her ink for her hornbook. That every limp had carried her across flooded fields when the fever came. And in that moment, in the heart of her own home, she had dishonored not just a man, but a father. That night, long after the hearth had dimmed to embers and the younger boy slept on his straw pallet, Margreta sat alone on the settle by the cold fireplace, arms crossed, still simmering. She told herself she had done nothing wrong. Hadn't honesty always been praised? Hadn't the priest said truth was a virtue? Footsteps on the earthen floor made her look up. Her mother stood in the doorway of the sleeping alcove, holding a small oil lamp. The light caught the silver strands in her otherwise dark hair, the marks of years spent worrying, working, watching. "You broke no pot tonight, Margreta," her mother said, her voice low but clear as a bell. "But you broke a heart that has carried ours for 20 years. Margreta opened her mouth to protest, but her mother raised a hand, gentle, not commanding. "You think shame is in poverty? No. Shame is in forgetting who stood beside you when fortune turned her back. Your father gave his body for this crown's wars. He gave his pride to spin wool when his loom was seized. And he gave you a name untainted by debt, though every coin he earned went to your schooling." She stepped closer, setting the lamp on the table. The flame trembled. "In our faith, in our village, to scorn one's father is to scorn the very root of the household. It is not merely unkind, it is unrighteous." Margreta looked down, her fingers knotting in her lap. "I only meant," he's so slow now. "We could do better." "Better?" Her mother's voice softened, but with steel beneath. "Better than a man who walked 10 miles barefoot to buy you a primer when you were 8. Better than one who sold his silver brooch to keep you from the workhouse during the lean year? You speak of better, child, but you measure with eyes clouded by vanity." She turned and walked to the wooden chest at the foot of her bed. From it, she drew out a folded garment, deep blue wool, finely woven, with delicate embroidery at the cuffs. Margreta's best dress, a gift from her godmother on her name day. "Tomorrow," her mother said, laying it on the table, "you will wear this. But inside out. And you will take your father's place at the market stall." Margreta stared. "What?" "For 7 days, you will rise before dawn. You will weave baskets using his tools. You will sell them in the square, speaking only in humble tones, never revealing your name. And you will eat only what you earn that day. That's cruelty." Margreta cried. "No," her mother said, meeting her eyes. "It is clarity. You scorned his hands. Now you will stand in his place and learn what they truly hold." She turned toward the hearth, her silhouette framed by the dying light. "If you return with nothing, you will go to bed hungry. If you return with shame, you will wear it openly. And if you return with understanding, then perhaps your heart will catch up to your tongue." Margreta sat in silence, the weight of her mother's words pressing down like a millstone. For the first time, she wondered if her truth had been anything but cruel. Dawn came grey and cold. Margreta, dressed in her finest kirtle, now turned inside out so the seams and plain lining showed, stood shivering at the family's market stall in the village square. The coarse wool scratched her skin, the reversed embroidery looked like clumsy mistakes. Villagers passed by, some glancing, others whispering. A woman selling turnips muttered, "There's one who forgot her place." Her father's basket tools felt foreign in her hands. The reeds split under her clumsy grip. By mid-morning, she'd completed only one basket, lopsided, with gaps in the weave. She priced it at a farthing. No one bought it. Day 2 was worse. Rain soaked through her thin wimple. A boy from the tannery tossed a rotten apple at her feet. "Fancy clothes, empty hands," he jeered. She wanted to scream. Instead, she bit her lip until it bled. On the 3rd day, she skipped breakfast. She earned 2 farthings, but spent one on bread to quiet her stomach. That night, she ate alone in the lean-to, too ashamed to face her family. By the 5th day, despair nearly swallowed her whole. The sky opened at noon. Rain poured in sheets, turning the market square to mud. Margrethe huddled under a torn awning, her inside-out kirtle soaked through, her fingers red and raw. An older woman spat near her basket. "Gentry brat playing poor," she hissed. "Real poor don't wear blue wool." Tears mixed with rain on Margrethe's cheeks. She thought of fleeing, of hiding in the woods until the week passed. But as she rose, a familiar figure limped through the downpour. Her father. He carried no umbrella, only a rough wool cloak draped over one arm. Without a word, he stepped under the awning, shook off the rain, and placed the cloak around her shoulders. It smelled of wood smoke and linseed oil, the scent of home. "You're cold," he said simply. She couldn't speak. Shame choked her. He picked up one of her baskets, this one tighter, neater. "You're learning," he murmured. That evening, back in the cottage, Margrethe did not sit at the table. She knelt before her father as he mended his brace by the fire. "Father," she whispered, her voice broken, "I was blind. Your hands don't weave baskets, they hold our home together. Forgive me." She placed a basket at his feet, the first she'd made with care, with patience, with love. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. He touched it gently, then her hair. "A house built on respect never falls, child. Not even in storm." Later that night, by the dim light of a single candle, Margrethe opened her small journal, the one bound in sheepskin, filled with Latin verses and copied psalms. But tonight, she wrote in English, her hand shaking not from cold, but from remorse. "I thought poverty was in his hands. But it was in my heart. He gave me books while selling his boots. He gave me safety while sleeping on straw. And I gave him scorn for his limp. Pride made me see weakness where there was sacrifice. Truth shows me grace where I saw shame. I will never again measure a man by his coin, but by his care." She closed the journal and pressed it to her chest. Outside, the rain had stopped. The moon cast silver light through the shuttered window, falling on her father's empty chair. She wept, not for the hunger, not for the mockery, but for the years she'd taken his love for granted. For every time she'd sighed at his slowness, rolled her eyes at his stories, wished for a father who rode to court instead of one who mended baskets. Now his hands were not weak. They were weary from holding them all up. 1 month passed. The cottage, once tense with unspoken hurt, now hummed with quiet rhythm. Margrethe rose each morning before dawn, not out of penance, but purpose. She wore simple undyed wool now, her sleeves rolled for work, her wimple tied neatly but plainly. She sat beside her father daily in the lean-to, weaving reeds into tight, even patterns. Her baskets sold well in the market not because they were perfect, but because they carried a story, of humility, of return, of love restored. She taught her younger brother to braid reeds, just as her father once taught her to read. Hands that work together, she told him, build more than baskets, they build family. On market day, her mother walked with her to the square, not as judge, but as companion. A merchant from Gloucester admired their craft. "Fine work," he said. "Who taught you?" Margrethe bowed her head slightly. "My father's hands began this craft. I am only learning." He bought 3 baskets. That evening, the family shared bread and cheese by the fire. The hearth glowed warm. Laughter, soft and genuine, filled the room. Her father told a story from his youth about a fox that stole a weaver's lunch, and Margreta laughed without bitterness. As she tucked her journal back into the chest, she glanced at her reflection in the polished bronze mirror, a gift from her mother years ago. The girl who once scorned poverty now saw nobility in perseverance. The daughter who mocked weakness now honored strength in silence. Outside, the village slept under a sky strewn with stars. Inside, a home stood firm not on wealth, nor status, but on respect, remorse, and the quiet, unbreakable bond of family. And in that humble cottage near Bristol, the weaver's daughter had finally learned, true honor isn't inherited. It's earned by how you treat those who gave you life.